Hey guys, so today we are continuing my repurposing makeup series with concealers. So I'm going to be sharing a bunch of tips for ways that you can repurpose your concealers. Maybe you are trying to use up a concealer and you just want to know some other ways that you might be able to get more use out of them, or maybe you have some concealers in your collection that you don't necessarily love for an under eye concealer or a spot concealer for maybe the obvious ways that you would think to use them, but these are some other ways that you may be able to get some use out of them, get your money's worth. I've also done similar videos on powder, blush, and highlighter, so if you want to check those out, I'll have the playlist linked down below. And if you're new to my channel, welcome. My channel is really all about inspiring you to use the makeup that you have and find new and fun ways to enjoy those products. So if you enjoy this video, while you're watching it, make sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. And let's go ahead and hop into these tips. So the first way of repurposing a concealer is to use it as a foundation. And I've actually found there are some concealers that I don't like on my under eyes, but I love them all over my face as a foundation. And the Pacifica Liquid Cover Concealer is actually one of those for me. I found that this just didn't quite give me enough coverage on my under eyes, and I felt like it didn't last well on my under eyes. But on my face, it's a nice level of like medium coverage. And I find that it wears pretty well on my face throughout the day. So I've also had some concealers that were a little bit too high coverage to wear all over my face. I just found they looked a little bit too cakey, like the Too Faced Born This Way. But that one I really liked mixing with like the Glow Recipe Niacinamide Dewdrops or any kind of like glowy serum or primer that you have like this. That made a beautiful skin-like foundation, and that was a great way to kind of use up that concealer a little bit faster. And of course, since you're using it all over your face, you're going to go through it much, much faster than if you were just using it as an under eye concealer or just as a spot concealer. So that looks pretty crazy. And then I just blend it out like I would a foundation. And by the way, the sunscreen I have on is a tinted sunscreen that's a little bit too dark for me, so that's why the concealer looks so light on my skin. It's the Unsun Mineral Tinted Sunscreen. It's a really nice one for underneath makeup, but that's why my skin looked a little bit darker than usual. And you can see it's got a good level of coverage, a nice kind of just satin finish, and I just love the way that looks on my skin. It's kind of surprising because I really didn't care for this on my under eyes, but I love the way it looks on my skin. I mean, look at that. Another thing that you can do with a fuller coverage concealer that maybe is a little bit too full coverage for you is to mix it with your foundation. Let's say you have a foundation that you want to just bump up the coverage a little bit, but you want to mostly keep the same formula and finish of that foundation. You can just add like a drop or two of your concealer to that to just bump up the coverage a little bit, and it's not going to alter the formula or the finish too much. It might change it a little bit, but that's another thing you can do if there's a concealer that you don't love on its own. Another thing I've been doing with concealers lately is mixing them with my cream blush, or lately I've also been using a liquid lipstick as a cream blush. Another way that I like to repurpose products is use a liquid lipstick or any kind of lipstick as a cream blush. And I'm currently trying to use up my E.L.F. liquid lipstick in Laguna Beach, which is a beautiful color for blush, but because it's a liquid lipstick, it's very pigmented and it's very easy to go overboard with this just on its own on my cheeks. So what I've been doing instead is mixing it on the back of my hand, just taking like a dot or two of that concealer. I said concealer, I meant liquid lipstick. And then mixing that with a dot or two of my concealer. And this one, I'm just using the E.L.F. Hydrating Camo, but any concealer works. And then I just take my brush, this is the BK Beauty 106, and kind of mix those together on the back of my hand, and you can see it's turning into a much more kind of wearable version of this color for me. And the other nice thing about this technique is that it also is adding a little bit of extra coverage to your cheeks. If maybe you sometimes feel like your concealer, or if maybe you sometimes feel like your cream blush is almost like lifting up your foundation, this will counteract that problem as well. Doesn't that just look so pretty? I put a little too much on, but we'll fix that. And the same thing goes for any kind of liquid or cream blush that you have that's maybe a little bit too pigmented on its own. Just mix it with a little concealer and you've got a much easier to work with shade. I'm just going to go over that with my sponge, kind of blend out the edges. And there is that. That is a technique I've been using a ton lately, and it's also a great way again, if you have a concealer that you don't really like, maybe on your under eyes or even as a spot concealer, when you mix it with a cream blush, you're only using a little bit of it. And I found that, like, I did that with my Milani concealer a few times, and that one I found looked very dry on my under eyes, but I didn't mind it on my cheeks mixed with my liquid lipstick. And of course, the same thing could be done with a liquid or cream bronzer that's too dark as well. Okay, so another way that you can repurpose your concealer is to use it to clean up your brows after you filled them in. So let's say things got a little messy, a little out of the lines. I'm just using a flat concealer brush. This is the MOTD Under the Covers brush, but any brush like this, you could even use a flat eyeshadow brush if you don't have a concealer brush like this. And I'm just taking a very small amount. I don't want to take too much. And I'm just going to use that to clean up the edges. Then I'm just taking my sponge and blending out the edge of that. But I do prefer a more hydrating concealer for this because I feel like a concealer that's too cakey might kind of cling to the little hairs that you have here. I'm going to do the same underneath the brow. So then I'm just going to take my spoolie and comb through my brows. And there you go. Alright, so what number are we on now? Is this 5? I have no idea. The next tip is to mix your concealer with your lipstick. Basically the same technique as we used for the blush. So let's say I want to use this lipstick again, but I want kind of a lighter version of this color. Again, I'm just going to take it on the back of my hand. I like to use the back of my hand as like a palette, basically. Again, I'm using a hydrating lipstick for this because I just feel like that gives me a better chance of not having crusty lips. And I'm just going to take a smaller dab of concealer than what I used for the cheeks because I don't want it to be too light. And I'm actually going to use this same like concealer brush to kind of mix these together. And now I'm left with a lighter, kind of springy pinkish nude color. And that is the color that I ended up getting. I actually think it's really pretty. This would make a beautiful, like, light pink spring nude. Wow, okay, that's actually the first time I tried that, and I honestly really like the way that looks. And just for comparison, this is what that lipstick color looks like just straight on its own. And this is a lip color that I don't really have elsewhere in my lipstick collection, so I just love how this tip basically gives you tons and tons of new lip color possibilities just hiding within your own collection. So that's a really fun little tip. Alright, taking that off now because my last tip is also lipstick related. Alright, so how many of you guys struggle to apply bold or like deep lip colors without having them look just super bumpy and uneven around your lip line? For me, the darker the color, the more I struggle to get like a nice clean line. Again, we're just going to take a little dab of that concealer, basically the same way that we did with the brows, and pick up just a very small amount on that same little flat concealer brush. Alright, so I've just carefully kind of drawn all the way around, and of course it looks kind of obvious right now, but I'm just going to take my sponge again. You want to be careful not to mix any of the lipstick with the concealer, so you definitely want to be very meticulous with this one. And there we go. Now I have a much more crisp and clean line around that lipstick. And by the way, if you're wondering what lip color that was Becca Merlot. Alright, so those are my tips for ways to multitask and repurpose your concealers. I hope this gave you some new ideas. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you've not already. I'd also love to see you over on my Patreon. I've got bonus videos going up there every single month. And otherwise, I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I will talk to you very soon in my next video. Bye!